All right. Let me welcome to the show Wendi Weiner. She's a lawyer, a career and personal branding expert, and she is the writing guru. And you can follow her across social media platforms at the writing guru. And how'd you come up with that name?
Thanks so much, first of all, Jenny, for having me on your show. It's actually a nickname that my parents gave to me growing up. And in 2010, I formed my business and got it trademarked a few years later.
Oh, that's smart. You were smart. Well, and that's why you do what you do, because you're always thinking, right?
Right.
So I was saying to before earlier in the show that I had hired you to have you help me with my resume because I'm trying to do some things on the side, some more side hustles, and you were recommended to me, and then I was like looking over your stuff, and you're really good at what you do, and then I thought about Marcus and Katie, and Marcus more than anyone I think needs a personal brand, and you really know how to do this. So I would love for you. And by the way, if you're listening and want to call in and like ask a question about branding, 888-947-8277, because Wendi Weiner is smart. So I was thinking that maybe Marcus, who works on the show, could talk to you a little bit too, because he's all over the place. Like, he's a tour guide in New York City. He's an on-air radio personality on my show. He also does like the behind the scenes technical engineering parts of the show. And he's all like,
I'm a wedding officiant.
And he officiates weddings.
I'm a failed stand-up comedian. I'm all kinds of
things. So Wendi Weiner, he has no idea how to present himself in a professional way. It's like his ADD spills out all over his page.
Sure. So that's actually a great question, and something that happens with a lot of people that come to me. The most important thing is you don't want to come off as a jack of all trades, because then you're a master of none. So you have to pick and choose the things from your career trajectory that you want to accentuate and highlight and also drive traffic to. So, for example, using myself as the prime example, the attorney thing is a very big piece of my marketing because my target clientele are C-suite executives, senior executives, and a lot of attorneys. So I have to use the attorney piece, right? Now, the other thing, too, is think about your background, Marcus, and where you want your audience to come from. Think about the things from your background that you're still marketing today. For example, are you still acting as a wedding officiant in a consistent capacity?
Not really.
Interesting. Huh. So that he wouldn't lead. So he wouldn't lead with that.
And we didn't even mention my master's degree that I just got, by the way. So yeah, I'm all over the place.
What's your degree in?
I got a master's degree focusing on the history and sociology of New York City, and I did a long-form radio piece about businesses on the Lower East Side.
But aren't you a tour guide?
I'm also a tour guide.
Do you do that frequently?
Less frequently than I used to, because I'm doing radio, which is my greatest love, but I do it fairly frequently. Okay.
You got to market that master's degree. First of all, number one, that master's degree is important because you're studying the sociology of people and you're actually imparting that into what you do every day in talk radio. Second, the other thing that you're doing with the traveling and the tour guide aspect is you're actually meeting new people every day. What happens if on that tour guide you meet someone who could potentially be a guest on Jenny's show?
It's happened before.
Right. So you definitely want to market it and you want to leverage it in a way that helps formulate your brand. And definitely after the show, I want you to send me your resume because I have some other ideas for you on ways in which you can actually gain more traction for your views on LinkedIn, gain more clients for your tour guide business. If you, let's say, wanted to offer a service, I'm thinking like an entrepreneur here, you wanted to offer a personalized service where you go and you work with people one-on-one and you act as their individualized, personalized tour guide, not working for a company, but working for yourself.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Right. And really putting it out there that you can do it. How do we know, Wendi, how to structure our whole professional self? Like for people listening, there are women who maybe are thinking about getting back into the workforce, right? and they're saying to themselves, well, how do I even begin to even go for part-time work? Do I mention that I was a lawyer before I had kids? Do I mention that I used to work in finance and then I took a 10-year chunk of time off and now I'm back? Like, how do people formulate resumes when they haven't been doing all that much for many years?
This is a great question and something that I get approached about a lot. The thing is, you have to compartmentalize your work history, and you have to think about the things that you have done in your work history that bring relevant skill sets to the forefront of what you're doing today. So, for example, if you were a cashier at Publix in college, I use that as an example because that's what I did when I was in college, that may not relate to anything that I'm doing today, but perhaps along the way, I did some type of teaching or writing, which I did do in my career while I taught college writing classes. I actually wound up using that as part of my brand because it shows that I'm really devoted and entrenched in writing. So think about the things in your work history. So, for example, if you were a finance manager before you were a stay-at-home mom and you're applying for a job today in finance, those financial skills are really important. One thing that people worry about is the gap, right? That gap of time between, let's say, being a finance manager and taking a 7 to 10 year stint and absence from doing that work. Think about the skills that you can be fostering over time. Perhaps you assisted your husband in his business and managed the finances and the books. Think about courses that you can take, certification programs, because there's a whole world out there today. Not everyone's going for a master's degree today. A lot of my clients are getting executive leadership certificates or very specialized certificates in that niche. The idea is to show the commitment to the skills besides refining them and applying them to the real world practical experience.
Right. And I love that. And that's true because there are things that you could be doing, have been doing that are very relevant. And if you sort of put them the correct way that makes someone pay attention, then it's not really like you haven't been doing what your skill set is.
Correct. And this is the problem that a lot of people run into. They think, well, because I haven't been a finance manager in over 10 years and now I'm applying to a finance manager role, people are going to think that there's a gap in skills. But think about and use your cerebral capabilities and think about all the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis or the volunteer work. Maybe you're the treasurer of the Parent-Teacher Association at the for your local children's school. What happens if you're on the board of directors for a national charity and you're actually the bookkeeper for them? That's right. From your relevant history. Just because it's unpaid doesn't mean that it's irrelevant. And that's where the big distinction happens.
That's so true. And great advice. And so I was talking to you about LinkedIn also because I think people don't really understand what LinkedIn is. And I know today you have a free webinar tonight that people can join. I'll actually put it in my story if people on Instagram, I'm at Just Jenny Hyde, if people want to sign up and attend it and it's about LinkedIn. So can you explain LinkedIn in a nutshell and why it's important? I mean, you changed my picture on LinkedIn and made it look way more professional than it looked before in 2 changes. But why is LinkedIn so important right now? And why are people missing out by not being a part of it?
Sure. So LinkedIn is your digital footprint. Think about it. 10, 15 years ago, people didn't Google us. They didn't search us online. When someone Googles your name, the first thing that they're looking for professionally is your LinkedIn profile. It's technically your online resume, but it's so much more than that. It's actually your personal brand. It's where people learn about you. They like to see the content that you follow, the content that you post. You can curate your own personal channel. Think of it as your own personal website that you can be building an entire audience based off of that. Also, with LinkedIn, you can refine your job search. You can actually apply to jobs on there. You can set up your job search parameters. You can connect with executives and hiring managers and talent acquisition specialists that you would never be able to have outreach to. So LinkedIn brings this entire world of people to have firsthand visibility and access to because there's 500 plus million users on there, but you're only sending your resume to a hand select number of people, certain hiring managers, specific companies. But LinkedIn allows you to approach the CEO of a company or the hiring manager or the chief HR officer at the company so that you have
Right.
firsthand access to approach them to make a connection, build a network. And for me, in my own brand, LinkedIn has allowed me to connect with clients from all over the world. It has gotten me paid content writing opportunities at Inc. magazine. It's gotten me speaking engagements. There's a whole world of opportunity. If you are an entrepreneur or business owner, you must be on LinkedIn. And if you're a job seeker, your hiring managers and prospective employers are looking you up on there.
Right. And that's why you have to have your best professional foot forward, which is why I had contacted you, because I think like I tried I said this on air, like I tried to go the route of putting my resume into like a resume.com builder thing, like a website thing. And it came back all like weird and jumbled. Like it was so bizarre. It was like not even like it was incoherent. So what are the benefits of hiring someone to help you, whether they hire you or not? Why should we get someone to help with our resumes?
Sure. So there is an actual industry out there devoted to resume writing. I am a member of the National Resume Writers Association, the Professional Association of Resume Writers, Career Thought Leaders. If you are thinking about hiring a resume writer, and you really should, because the competition is fierce. Secondly, think about it. When you're writing your own resume, you're thinking about it from a very subjective point of view, but a trained, credentialed, professional resume writer actually looks at you from a much more objective perspective. Most resume writers are either former recruiters, they've been on hiring teams like I have, could be a former practicing attorney, a former executive. So there is an entire industry out there, and I highly recommend whoever you consider hiring out there for your listeners, make sure that they're a certified resume writer. Vet them, ask questions. Don't just go to one of those websites where you can just upload and have something spit out and you don't even know who you're speaking to.
Right. Because it's also, and it couldn't format it. It couldn't understand it. It couldn't read. If your resume has any more detail to it than just 1994, I worked at Citibank, then it's going to get all jumbled. It's not a human being.
Right.
You can't put nuance
it's a computer
in it.
system. And here's the other thing that a lot of people fail to realize today about job searching. You see, in the olden days, you'd go online, you maybe send an email to the direct person, you'd fax your resume, a human was reading your resume. Today, more than 90% of companies use software systems called applicant tracking software systems, right? So your resume has to be optimized to pass through that applicant tracking system. However, statistically, more than 70% of jobs today are acquired through active networking, and more than 80% of jobs are actually not advertised online. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're not networking for that role and reaching out to that person, you could be missing out on an amazing opportunity. So put a real world example to the test. If I wanted to go work for Starbucks in their legal department, I would not just be applying online and uploading my resume. I'd be contacting the general counsel, the chief legal officer, people in the legal department that I may have a connection with. Maybe they went to my law school. Maybe they went to my undergraduate program. Maybe they were in my sorority in college. All of those factors can lead you to the right person. It's all about your network.
Right. And this type of network, differing from a Facebook or an Instagram or a Twitter, is really meant for that kind of business networking.
Correct. Twitter, is used obviously for media and publications. That's the way I use it. The other thing too is Instagram is just your highlight reels of your everyday life. We're talking about your professional brand, your outward appearance to the professional world, connecting with like-minded professionals, targeted clients, for you potential radio show guests. Also, you can market your eyeglass wear. You have the opportunity to connect with the right people in the right audience sector. Right.
And so, Katie, do you have any questions? Because Katie always has different things that she's working on. She's very, you do a lot, and Katie produces the radio show, and then she has other side hustles. And
And I also recently got my MBA as well. So I have like general questions that I think is maybe have flexible answers, but this came up when we were talking about you coming on a day or two ago, is the resume length and like certain resume formatting issues and how long is too long? Can you do 2 pages? I know in my school, when advised, they said, well, if you had a 10-year career and have enough, you can fit 2 pages. But is it as tight as that, or what are your suggestions?
Oh, it's great. So the answer is it depends. It depends on your career. If you've got a 15 to 20-year career, it's going to be hard to pack that into 1 page. But if you just graduated college yesterday and you only have a couple of internships on there, your resume is going to be 1 page. The reality is that your resume needs to be as long as it needs to be to incorporate all of the details from your career history. So there's no right or wrong answer on length. That being said, statistically, less than 10 seconds are spent scanning your resume. So if you're thinking about having a 4 to 6 page resume listing every single job that you've had, back to when you were 12 years old as a babysitter, that's not going to work. You got to put in the relevant work history that's going to market you. Now, one thing that could be very good for you, Katie, because you just got your MBA, you may want to include some of your relevant coursework from your MBA program that will help filter in some additional keywords. Because, for example, if your MBA was focused on entrepreneurship or finance, you can add those things in there if you're applying for targeted roles that relate to that coursework.
Great.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And another question I had, for people who, I guess, change careers or maybe go back to school and they're midway through their careers. Let's say I have 11 professional years of experience, but I also just got my MBA. Because this is something I did the opposite of what I guess I was told. Should I put my schooling at the top or at the bottom?
Great question. Oh my God. So want to know the answer to that.
That is a great question. So what I recommend doing is every resume has a formulaic equation. You should go to my website after the show, writingguru.net, look at the samples on my website, because you will notice there's a thematic element to the resume. It's got to have a branding statement at the top. It's got to have a roadmap. It's going to have your professional summary, core areas of focus, some bullet points underneath it, and then you move into the professional experience. Because if a person spends 5 to 7 seconds statistically looking at your resume, you want to grab their attention from the get-go, kind of like reading the back of a book, right? You read that little short summary, and that intrigues you to want to read the book that's on the New York Times bestseller list. Same thing with your resume. So, for example, if you graduated college, let's say 15 years ago, and then you went back to school for your MBA, and you've got a 20-plus year career history, your education section should be in the back. But you may want to put a blurb in the roadmap of your resume that says MBA from top-ranked business school, so that a person knows in reading your resume at the very beginning that you've gotten an MBA from a prestigious school.
Gotcha. I am definitely going to the website.
I just thought of one too, Penny.
Huh? You thought of another question? Go ahead.
We have a lot more. We have a lot of parents and moms, particularly, that listen, and sometimes when they decide to take a couple of years off after their babies are born, and then they want to get back into things, it's hard to explain those gaps on a resume.
No, that's what we just discussed it. You were doing something else that you can use those gaps and sort of put in other things you were doing that might be relevant to what you want to do next.
Well, then
There's
that
a
just
way
proves listening is not something I should put on my resume.
It's not something you should put on your resume, that you're an excellent listener. No, but Wendi Weiner, for those listening, and they can go to thewritingguru.com and they can follow you across social media. thewritingguru.net, and they can follow you across social media platforms at The Writing Guru. Like Katie was asking, impressive school first, which you're saying, like, whatever's the most impressive thing about you professionally is what you want to put first, right? So like so does that mean if you got like special awards or special like that stuff, you want to put the catchiest thing first?
Right. For example, if your claim to fame is working for a Fortune 50 company for 10 years, you want to put something at the roadmap of your resume that you worked for a Fortune 50 company. Those are really important things. If you are applying to startups and you've got a little bit of startup experience as an angel investor, that's something that you're going to want to put at the forefront of the resume. Think about and again, this requires you analyzing job postings too, looking at what the qualifications and must-have requirements are for the job posting, and then think about from your work history and your credentials, what fits into the parameters of what they're looking for and what are your best marketing skills. What are the items in your toolkit, in your arsenal, that you can best market to position yourself?
Right. I love that. And how do people go about hiring a resume writer? Because they could hire you and you're the best at what you do, but you're expensive. So not everybody is going to be able to afford to hire you to write their resume. So how do people go about finding someone to help them? Because there's so many shingles out there and people saying like, oh, I could do it. And I've experienced that years ago, like 10 years ago, I had someone take a stab at it. It was horrible. There were like spelling errors and weird grammar. And I was like, okay, this is not going to work for me. I'm gonna have to like slog through it myself or just not even go there. So how do you do it?
Right. So I get a lot of people that approach me all the time and they can't afford me. And I always recommend them to the National Resume Writers Association, the NRWA.com, as well as the Professional Association of Resume Writers, PARW.com, and start looking at their list. For example, you don't have to work with a resume writer who's actually in your location. It's a virtual style business. You can work with a resume writer anywhere. I have a client in Singapore right now. You can work with a resume writer who's located in Massachusetts and you live in Florida. So it doesn't really matter. What matters is look for the certifications. Nationally certified resume writer, certified professional resume writer. There's all different types of certifications from governing bodies. If a person calls themselves certified, research them, look them up, vet them. That is the most important thing because candidly, the resume industry is unregulated. So if you wanted to call yourself a resume writer tomorrow, Jenny, you absolutely can. And so
I won't, but that's good.
You want to make sure they're certified. And there are things that are going to matter. What was their educational background? What career background do they have? Are they certified? Are they featured in media outlets? All of those things are going to matter.
Right. And that makes sense. And because you don't want to trust your presentation to just anyone.
Right. And the other thing, too, is talk to the person. I actually recommend setting up calls with a few resume writers before you make a decision on who you hire because a personalized service, there's enough business to go around. You want to make sure that you're being matched with the person who's the right fit for you.
Right. That makes total sense because otherwise, if you vet them and they don't seem like they get what you're saying, that's not going to work very well.
And also, the other thing, too, is there's a lot of free resources online. I put out a ton of content. I'm published and featured in 50-plus media outlets. I have my own blog on my site. I always provide people with resources. So that's the other thing is look at the resources that the writer has. Because often they have free resources on their website as well.
Right. So you can get a little of you could see a little, and also you can maybe see examples and maybe have to ask for some examples of what they've done as well.
Correct. You want to look at their samples. You want to look at how they market themselves. That's going to be another thing. If they can't market themselves well, you think they're going to be able to market you well?
No, that's true. You're right. And I always say that whenever someone says like, oh, you should look at this person for digital blah, 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 whatever it is. And then I look and I'm like, but they have like 4 people who follow them. Like I get confused. If they can't do it for themselves, how could they possibly help someone else? Like depending on what it is, how could they help someone else? How important is it to keep your resume updated, and how often should people be updating resumes?
Great question. You should update your resume every 6 months. It should be updated at the beginning of the year and going into the fall job search season. Remember, having your resume updated puts you in the opportunity circle, right? Because you may not be looking for a job today, but 2 weeks from now, there may be an executive that reaches out to you because they really like your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have an updated resume, you're in trouble. So keep that resume updated. Now, the one thing that I do want to recommend that everyone should do, no matter your industry or career level, have a brag book. When you get a email saying, great job on this project, thank you for taking the lead, keep a record of the projects that you're leading, the results that you're bringing forth to an organization. If you're in sales, numbers are everything. So think about qualitative numbers and quantitative results, because sometimes those are really 2 very distinct things, and it's really important to constantly have that information and data updated in your resume.
And it's very important in general to have a resume. I think that's the other thing that people think, because everything online is easily sourced, meaning you could Google someone and find their Google footprint, but that you actually need to make it even easier. Give them a resume where they can actually see everything in one place.
Right. Just because there's LinkedIn today and websites and things like that, the resume is not dead. It's still completely alive and thriving, and you still need a resume. Everyone needs one. And here's the other thing. You don't have to be a job seeker to need a resume. You know how many people contact me? They own a business. They're independent consultants. And when they go to market themselves, people ask them for their resume all the time. So a lot of people need a one-page networking resume.
I love that. And what about references? Should references be on your resume?
They should not, but you should have a separate sheet typed up with a list of 4 to 5 references.
Okay. That's so there. Did you hear that, Marcus?
That's why I asked.
Yeah, it was from Marcus. So Wendi Weiner, we're actually out of time, which sucks because you're terrific, but I'm going to have Marcus send you something and then have you sort of critique it and come back in like a month and say like what he has to do to fix it and that kind of thing. Does that work?
Sounds great.
Amazing.
Thank
Follow
you,
Wendi. Go to my story to check out the webinar and sign up for the free webinar tonight for Wendi Weiner's webinar on LinkedIn. Follow at The Writing Guru everywhere on social media and go to thewritingguru.net. Thank you very much for being on my show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take good care. Bye-bye. All right. Quick break and I'll be right back.